matchup we had this past week. Alabama took on the LSU Tigers in a stunning 20-13 overtime victory in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But that was last week. And with that being said, welcome to the new edition of 15 and Counting, Touchdown Alabama Magazine's premier football show. And as always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Ivan White. Ivan, what's going on?
Doing good, man. I survived the trip down to Death Valley last week, but it's good to be back on 15 and Counting.
Great to be back. As I mentioned, Alabama won last week. This is a whole new week, whole new ball game. Number one, Mississippi State comes to Tuscaloosa. Dan Mullen in his 6th year with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. College game days in the mix. An SEC championship shot, Heisman implications, just so much on the line this week. But as we start with Mississippi State, it all begins with their star quarterback, junior Dak Prescott. What makes him so different?
You know, a lot of people are comparing him to Tim Tebow, and it's rightfully deserved. And I know you could say Nick Saban took a shot saying he's like Tim Tebow except he can actually throw. But I mean, looking at Dak Prescott, you know, he uses his legs, and not just his legs, he uses his strength and his inner determination to want to win every game. And you can see it every time he goes out there on the field. He's given everything he's got, the way he can run over linebackers, yet still break away from cornerbacks and outrun them. It's just he uses the perfect balance of strength and speed, and it's a component that the Crimson Tide have historically struggled against, you know, with the Auburn-like offense and the read option type quarterback. So we're going to have to see this week, can they contain Dak Prescott, because he's going to be one of their biggest factors.
Dak Prescott this season has 2,231 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but on the ground, this young man does damage. 779 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, but he feeds off the energy in the run game. He feeds off the energy of running back Josh Robinson, the human bowling ball. Josh Robinson, 984 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns. So, in the same extent that Alabama has to look out for Dak Prescott, don't overlook Josh Robinson.
No, indeed, don't overlook Josh Robinson. He's arguably one of the top 2 running backs in all the SEC, top 3 maybe if you want to put Leonard Fournette and T.J. Yeldon up there. But you look at the offensive for Mississippi State, and you got to look at this. Are they one-dimensional? Because really, you can say that really they use the ground game to solidify what they do. And also, Mississippi State has not left the confines of Stark Vegas in a while now. It's been a while since they left the state of Mississippi. They played a couple games at home. They played Arkansas, and they played a cupcake game last week to get prepared for this game. But you got to wonder, coming to the confines of Bryant-Denny Stadium, one of the loudest stadiums in all of the nation, it's going to be a hostile environment. I know people around town have been buzzing ever since last week's game. All right, it's a good win, but on the number 1. So you've got to wonder, can Mississippi State rise to the adversity? Because I think this is going to be their toughest test of the season. And not just because I'm a Crimson Tide fan and also I write about the Crimson Tide, but it's really going to be their toughest test, not just because of what's going on the field. What's going on in the environment around you is going to come up even more as a factor than any other game that they've had this year.
Another part of Mississippi State's weaponry happens to be its receiving core, led by 6'5" Darania Wilson. Darania Wilson this season, 367 yards with 6 touchdowns. Mississippi State, a lot of size at the receiving core, not just Darania Wilson. They also have Joe Morrow at 6'4", and also Fred Ross at 6'4". But the most dangerous receiver of them all happens to be 5'9", Jamion Lewis, who is a threat in the return game. He's a threat as a receiver. He's a threat if you flank him at running back. Oh, let's not forget young man Jamion Lewis can also pass the ball for touchdowns. He was a high school quarterback. So if you look at Mississippi State's receiving core, you're going against an Alabama secondary that's improving game by game. Cyrus Jones continues to impress. Mississippi State is less about size and more about technique. What is the technique factor for Mississippi State in trying to get open?
The technique for them is they want to use an up-tempo type of offense, and they want to keep you guessing and keep you running. But for their passing game, they really don't like taking a lot of deep threats unless it's really necessary. And what I mean by that is you can look at the Kentucky game. A lot of those passes that were their long touchdowns, those were your average 15 to 10, 15-yard passes that the athletes in open field got the job done and got to the end zone. And that was one of their biggest, that was to date probably their toughest road test. And you look at that game also, Dak Prescott manhandled the linebacking core, and he made sure he went between the tackles. Most of the time when you have a quarterback doing the read option, he's going to go up to the outside. Dak Prescott doesn't mind going between the tackles like a running back, and that's a different kind of factor. He's a different type of element that the Crimson Tide have yet to see anybody like him this year.
Ivan, you know, I know, Alabama struggled at times on the road this season, but at home, oh baby, they have been masterful at Bryant-Denny Stadium this year, 4-0 at home. They're scoring 48.5 points per game, averaging 610.3 yards of offense. Blake Sims has been an absolute assassin, 71.3% of those passes completed for 1,109 yards, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. Amari Cooper, 39 of his 71 receptions have come from inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. The fans think it's going to be a sold-out crowd. Saban's going to have butts in those seats. What is going to be the key factor for Alabama in this game? Because as you know, last season, 2012 against LSU, after an emotional win, they came back home, suffered a letdown against Texas A&M, known as the Johnny Manziel Heisman moment. How does Alabama avoid a letdown Saturday?
Well, first of all, to talk about the home scheduling, well, you have to look at the schedule too. Some of the games on there weren't really up to par talent. 2 of the games weren't, but 2 of them were SEC opponents in Florida and Texas A&M. A Florida team that looks much improved now that Will Muschamp has got that team heading in the right direction.
Treon Harris is passing the ball for crying out loud.
Yes, and a 59-0 blowout of a Texas A&M team that was thought to be irrelevant, but now went into Jordan-Hare Stadium last week and upset the Auburn Tigers 41-38. So there are some good opponents that they faced at home, and I will say this, in the 3 years that I've been covering the Tide now, this is the team that feeds the most out of the home energy inside the stadium. I haven't seen a team, I've seen previous years' teams get pumped up once in a while, but they feed off energy. I've seen the sidelines getting rowdy and crunk for every instance that the Crimson Tide has anything good. And I think they need to feed off that home energy, but like you said, Blake Sims is a key factor, but honestly the key factor for this game is going to be Lane Kiffin. The play calling that he chooses to do is going to be huge, because as we can see in the last game against Texas A&M at home, there was intended to be a wide receiver screen to DeAndrew White or Christian Jones, I can't remember 100%, but he called an audible from the sidelines and told Amari Cooper to go deep, which ended in a touchdown for the Crimson Tide. What the defense gives you and how the Crimson Tide, not only on the field, but the offensive coordinator in Lane Kiffin reads the field, and the play calling selection. Last week, there was a little too much passing for Crimson Tide Nations like it. Let's see if they return to running the ball downfield, and let's see if that read option is going to be incorporated more this week than other weeks before.
Alabama's offensive line will look to continue to exert its dominance this week. We talked about on last week against LSU, they had plays where they were able to get some good runs ripped off and kind of reverted back to the pass game. This week, Alabama's offensive line will look to kind of neutralize Mississippi State's front 7 and get the run game going. Going to Alabama's defense this week, this is the key for them. Kirby Smart has to rush 4. He has to rush 4, continue to harass Dak Prescott in the football game constantly. When you watch the games between Mississippi State, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Kentucky, both programs, Arkansas and Kentucky, constantly harassed Dak Prescott, constantly knocked him down, got to him, and even forced turnovers when they had to. Alabama's defense this week, Xavier Dixon, A'Shawn Robinson, Jonathan Allen, these guys in this defensive line have got to rush, have got to hit home. Even if they don't hit home, get your hands up, bat some balls down, affect Dak Prescott. But what I want to see, Ivan, is this the game that Kirby Smart lays her sophomore linebacker Reuben Foster and says, young man, this is your time to ball. You look at Reuben Foster. He is by far the fastest, hardest hitting linebacker on this team. Reggie Ragland's emerged, yes. Trainer Priest is the senior leader, but Reuben Foster is a guy that when he hits, he brings the wood. And this is a game where I would love to see Reuben Foster go mano a mano and spy Dak Prescott.
Yes, I would like to see that, but for the Crimson Tide defense, last week you saw a lot of bend but don't break. And what I think you're going to see them do is what they did in the second half and the fourth quarter more. They're going to try and cover that middle of the field, because last week they realized they were leaving the middle of the field wide open, and any quarterback can, Jefferson last week for LSU just rushed right up the middle for a 5 to 7 yard gain, even sometimes a 10+ yard gain, multiple times against the Crimson Tide. They adjusted, covered the center of the field, and made the corrections that they needed to make sure that wouldn't happen again. This week with Dak Prescott, like I said, with the physical presence that he brings and running in between the tackles, the defensive line for Alabama has gotten a lot of sacks that are much improved from last year's sack total this year. But what I think they want to do is I think the defensive ends might stay at home a little more this week than what you previously thought. Now, normally I would say bring a blitz, bring the house, it's a rushing quarterback. You got to pressure him. No, I would say stay at home a little bit, and I see the Crimson Tide defense at least, maybe not keeping both defensive ends at one time, but at least keeping one. You can see where the read option is coming from. You can clearly tell the defensive line that Alabama Crimson Tide have this year is such a good defensive line at first contact off the ball. And I think that this is the game you're actually going to see where they get that physical presence and get down and dirty, so to speak, in this game.
Alabama will look to avoid what happened last week with having Anthony Jennings being able to run up the middle to convert those third downs into first downs against MSU. Alabama's defense will look to contain and bottle up Dak Prescott. But now it's time to get to the prediction of this game. It's Alabama, it's Mississippi State. This is for all the marbles. Ivan, what do you got here?
Well, you know, Mississippi State's been an impressive team this year. They deserve to be the #1 team in the nation. They've had a gauntlet of a schedule. They've beaten the Auburn Tigers at home. They've beaten a very tough Arkansas team at home. They've beaten Kentucky in a tough environment, one of the biggest games in their program's recent history.
And they also beat LSU in Death Valley.
And they also beat LSU in Death Valley, a feat that the Crimson Tide also did last week. In this game, inside the confines of Bryant-Denny, you can never bet against the Crimson Tide. And I know last time the Crimson Tide had the same exact situation coming off an LSU big win, to come back and lose to Johnny Manziel. I think this year they remember that, and they're going to think about that in the back of their minds. And I know Coach Saban and Lane Kiffin and the whole entire coaching staff does not want that to happen. So I'm picking Alabama in this game. Final score, 38-17.
38-17, good prediction there, Ivan. I agree with you. This is a get your mind right game. This is a get your mind right game in the sense of Alabama's going to come out fast, they're going to come out quick, and they're going to want to put some points on the scoreboard to get that defense hyped up and ready to defend Dak Prescott. I have Alabama winning this game by the final score of 35-20. Blake Sims has a good game, and that defensive line gets to Dak Prescott, so I have 35-20 in favor of the Tide. A rematch game out of last year. The prayer Jordan Hare, Nick Marshall, 73-yard touchdown to Ricardo Lewis. Was he looking for the ball? God only knows, but Auburn won the football game. Rematch in Athens this year. Todd Gurley's back. Hudson Mason slinging a hot pigskin. Georgia's healthy at receiver. Auburn's looking to rebound from an embarrassing loss against Texas A&M and a game where, let's just be honest, Kyle Allen balled out. Georgia, Auburn, what do you see here?
Auburn coming off a shocking home loss where it seems their luck somewhat have ran out after last year's miracle run to the title game. Auburn had a scary injury last week with
DeQuil
Wilson. Had a scary injury, but it looks like he might not be able to play this week, but he might be able to come back sometime this season. I just think Gus Malzahn's not going to let this team quit. Yes, you're probably out of the national title picture. You're still somewhat in the ACC West picture, though. So you got to keep playing these games. You still got an Iron Bowl left that's obviously one of the biggest games in the entire nation. So in this game, I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers. Even though it's a rematch, and I know Todd Gurley and everything's back of the tip six play and everything from last year, I think Auburn wins this game 38-10. I think it's a blowout in Georgia just because I know it's a big game for Georgia and it's revenge, but I just don't see the Auburn Tigers going down like that.
I disagree. I'm going with Georgia winning this football game. It's the return of Todd Gurley. Hudson Mason's playing good football right now. The Georgia defense is playing well under Jeremy Pruitt. And also, the depth that Georgia has at linebacker, the depth they have at receiver, this is a huge game for them to continue on the quest for winning out the SEC East. They remember what happened last year. I got the Dogs. I think Mark Richt gets it done. Mike Bobo gets it done. And the Georgia Bulldogs win this game. It's going to be a shootout. I have Georgia 35-30.
All right, that's a good prediction, Stephen. But we have another game in what I call in the preseason the Muschamp Chronicles, and I believe it's lived up to the hype, ladies and gentlemen. We have the Florida Gators going up against South Carolina Gamecocks this week. Spurrier going against his old program. It's always an interesting thing to see. Stephen, in this game, who do you have in this game?
I have Florida, and the reason why they finally found an offense. Trayon Harris is the guy for them. He's the quarterback. He's the youth of that team. He's passing the ball now, especially in the game against Vanderbilt last week. Matt Jones, Kelvin Taylor, a deadly combination of running back. Great run, 1-2 punch. The Florida defense playing stingy. I like this football game. And keep in mind, Florida has a chance to backdoor its way into an SEC title game if it wins out and Georgia and Missouri lose. So don't count out Florida. I have the Gators winning this football game 28-14.
It's an incredible story how the Florida Gators were at the midst of firing their head coach mid-season, and now they're on the cusp of actually having a chance to win the SEC East as a whole. In this game, Florida has a lot of momentum going for them right now. That was a tougher game in Vandy than what people think it was.
I mean, Jordan McCrary can pass the football.
And this team looks very impressive. I'm going to go with the Florida Gators too. And I'm starting to say maybe Muschamp does stay for another year at Florida. He's actually showing that this program maybe got off to not as a hot start as Gator Nation would hope, but they are rebounding very good. So I'm going to pick the Florida Gators to beat South Carolina Gamecocks by a final score of 24-14.
All right, we have the battle for the Golden Boot, LSU and Arkansas. Les Miles and the Tigers trying to rebound from that devastating overtime loss to Alabama. And Brett Bielema, so close. He is so close to his first SEC win as the head coach of Arkansas. They almost had it against Alabama. They almost had it against Texas A&M. They almost had it against Mississippi State. I think this is the week they get it. I think they get it against LSU. I think Brandon Allen plays a lights-out football game. Corliss Marshall returns for Arkansas, along with Jonathan Williams and Alex Collins. The tight end combination of Derby, A.J. Derby, and Hunter Henry is deadly. Arkansas's defense playing good football. I'm going Hogs.
Okay. I agree with you. I'm going with the Hogs as well. But think about this, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be inclement weather, probably in Vegas this weekend. It's going to be cold.
It's going to be in Little Rock this weekend.
It's going to be in Little Rock. It's going to be in Little Rock this weekend. It's going to be an SEC-type game, just like we saw for the last time we saw the LSU Tigers. It's going to be a run it down the field, run it down your throat type of game. And let's face the facts, ladies and gentlemen. LSU, even though they do have weapons out there like Malachi Dupree, they're still a one-dimensional team. They still are a Leonard Fournette run-based team. And Arkansas is also obviously a run-based team, no.
But I trust Brandon Allen a little bit more than Anthony Jennings.
And that's why I'm picking the Arkansas Razorbacks to win this game by a final score of 28-21. I think they finally get over the hump, like Brett Bielema said this week. Everybody's praising us and saying we should already have an ACC win. Let's go ahead and give our fans what they deserve.
Last one right here, I am in Tennessee, Kentucky. The battle of who can get to a bowl game first. The Kentucky Wildcats started the season 5-1. They've had 4 straight losses. They're 5-5 right now. Mark Stoops still has a good ball club. Patrick Toles can throw the football. A.J. Stamps is a good defensive back. And let's not forget Alvin Bud Dupree can rush the quarterback. Tennessee, Josh Dobbs is the future. Butch Jones hasn't played well at quarterback. Tennessee has weapons with Jason Kroom, Alton Pick, Howard, Marquez North, Jalen Hurts running the football. Tennessee's defense, not great, but with guys like A.J. Johnson, Kurt Magid, Cameron Sutton, they're playing well. Who do you see in this one?
Tennessee is a team that's been interesting. We had them as one of those young upstart teams in the preseason, and they pretty much kept their name. Kentucky is a team, his defensive side of the ball has really impressed me this year. I wasn't expecting the physicality that I've seen from them. Like you said, Bud Dupree and all of them over there have been playing very physical, and it's a little different than what I'm used to seeing from Kentucky defense. But this game's in Knoxville. And with the change at quarterback that the Tennessee Volunteers have made and the way it's affected this team, I just can't go against the Vols at home right now. They have a lot of momentum going for them. The program is still moving in the right direction. Both programs are moving in the right direction. So you can't complain either way, win or lose to this game. I know each program wants a bowl win, but I'm going Tennessee, final score 28-7.
28-7 in favor of Tennessee. Give me the Cats, man. I like Kentucky in this game. I think this is the game Mark Stoops and company get it done. They get to a bowl game. Patrick Toles has a successful outing. They get the pass game going. They get the run game going. Bud Dupree harasses Josh Dobbs. I like Kentucky in this football game by the final score 27-20. I love the Cats.
Okay, the Cats are a very good team this year. They're much improved, but we're going to have to wait and see how it plays out on the field.
We're going to have to wait and see how it plays out on the field. That is correct. But that's been all the time we had here on the day here on 15 and Counting. Touchdown Alabama Magazine's premier football show for Ivan White. I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith. And always remember, Titletown has been one of the biggest supporters of Touchdown Alabama Magazine, so always remember to like Titletown on Twitter. That's @Titletown. The company name being Whitwell Sports. We'd like to thank Titletown for all they do for Touchdown Alabama Magazine. But as I said earlier, this has been 15 and Counting, Touchdown Alabama Magazine's premier show this Saturday. Alabama, Mississippi State. It's for all the marbles, ladies and gentlemen. CBS will have the game live at 2:30. And until next time, so long, everybody.